Hey, how's it going? This is Jesse, and this is my first video for my new YouTube channel. So I thought it'd be cool to talk about how I go about doing past life astrology. This is something I'm extremely passionate about. I've read many books about it and studied it really in depth. It's something that I include in all of my readings. I really like to look at how the chart reflects some of the, I use the word karma. Some people don't like me using that word for this, but I just use it because I feel like it explains a lot. So what is someone's karma, and how does the chart show that? So one of the main things I look at when I'm really trying to figure out like what are the main evolutionary goals of this person is that I get a sense of the chart. So I do all the readings of like the moon, sun, the main aspects. I look at everything and I figure out, okay, who is this person? What are some of the goals? What is this person? Like, what is the chart trying to push this person to? If it's like someone who has like a 10th house Aries sun and moon, for example, to be like a really crazy example, okay, that person's life is probably meant to be something public, right? Maybe it's some type of like celebrity, someone who's supposed to be an actor, or someone who's supposed to be like a politician. I don't know. So take that a step further. Let's say like we've done the reading, we see that as like a big theme, like a big need for public attention and to really assert themselves on that level. I would then look at where the North Node and South Node are and where Pluto is. So why is that important? Well, Pluto is extremely important in Western astrology in that what I look at it as is as a point on the chart that by following, and it's mostly house placement as opposed to sign, just because entire generations, like a whole decade, can have the same Pluto sign. Like I was born in the Pluto and Scorpio era, and like most of the charts I've ever done of people around my age or even like 5-6 years close to it have been Pluto and Scorpio. But it's mostly the house placement, and that is really pointing towards like where, if someone like where, like it's like this dense, the metaphor is like this dense ball of energy that's like hidden in the chart, and by going into it there's also a lot of shadow material that comes up, but by facing it you're propelling yourself towards this extreme amount of growth. Like it's like this dense energy that energetic path that you follow, and that can take you to basically another level you've ever been at in like every part of life. I read a book that gave a few examples of Pluto being used what would be like more incorrectly and correctly, and I want to talk about that. Let me just pull up that chart just to make sure. It was in reference to Pluto, to the Pluto of Gandhi and Adolf Hitler, and I just want to make sure. One second. Okay, where are we at? Okay, so we see with Gandhi, we've got a 7th house Pluto in Taurus. And with Hitler, we've got an 8th house Pluto. So those are like two random examples that for some reason I remember those two from my readings. I remember those two being, I forget the point he was making, but the overall point, and I guess maybe I'm just like forgetting it, and it was like two different historical figures, but the point was that like they're like, you can use Pluto in a great way to shift. Like you can be someone, like if you're following your Pluto, that like completely shifts society, that really like does something that's on such a large level, like you're following your like highest possible dharma. But also there's a way you can do that in the way Hitler did it, where you're actually following that, but in a bad way. You can't deny what Hitler did was massive on a grand scale, but obviously it was evil. And it's basically the opposite for Gandhi, right? So I'm not going to go too into detail because I don't want to like go down that rabbit hole of how Hitler followed an 8th house Gemini Pluto, and how Gandhi followed a 7th house Taurus. I mean, the 7th house Taurus one seems pretty pretty obvious to me. It's very relational and very, very grounding and very peaceful, right? But basically, Pluto for a lot of people's charts really shows like where that big like dense ball of evolutionary pole is, right? So we get some ideas there. Then we have the different aspects to Pluto. So I'm going to give my own chart as an example, as I do a lot. It's a chart I know. I give like different people's charts as examples, but a lot of times mine just comes up first because I know it so well. I have Venus in square to my Pluto. So having a square aspect to a planet like Pluto basically makes that planet Plutonian. So my Venus is in Aquarius, but having that square with Pluto makes me have more of a Scorpio Venus, right? And I'm not going to go too into like how that shows up for me, but it definitely shows up, and it's very obvious throughout my life. It's been like a very, very prominent theme. So we look at that, and then we also like the South Node and North Node is very, very important. So what those two show, the South Node is going to show, basically I always explain it to clients is like where you've been, like what in past lives, and like kind of like on like what you kind of bring into this life, right? It's like the mountain you've climbed a million times. It's like kind of where you've been and you know well, but if you kept going down that route, it would just be the same old. It's not a change. Well, the North Node is an opposite side of the chart. If you look at any chart, the South Node and North Node are always 180 degrees away. They're the two nodes of the moon. So they're not actual planets. They're figurative places in space, basically, or points in space. And the North Node is the opposite. It's a mountain that you've never climbed. It's a mountain that like you need to follow in order to reach that higher evolutionary growth. So what I often see is a parallel. I don't always see it, but I often see a parallel between the Pluto placement, the North Node, South Node, the aspects they both make. Also, like I want to add, like the North Node and South Node aspects are very, very important too. I see a parallel between those and what the person's chart is blessed with in terms of like what they're bringing into the world, what their personality is. And it's very interesting to see how that personality that they have, like, you know, their personal planets being ascendant, moon, sun, Venus, Mars, Mercury, how those all shape and put them in a position to either reach that goal easily or reach that goal with a lot of difficulty. So we also use the other outer planets to look at that too. Neptune, Uranus, Saturn, even Jupiter in some senses, although Jupiter's kind of in that like middle range. And also Chiron. Yeah. So I often see themes. I'll go back to one chart I've done recently. It was someone who the push was like very, very much so towards creative self-expression. And they'd been given a birth chart that, and when I say they've been given, I'm just kind of speaking from the opinion that when you reincarnate, this is just my opinion as an evolutionary astrologer and just my personal opinion. When you reincarnate, you basically pick different life challenges, right? That you have to overcome that have varying amounts of difficulty, right? So basically, like what those are showing, like this person's was showing, was that creative self-expression was like a big, big, big topic. It was something that's probably been held back from different trauma in past lives, and there was a big, big push towards finding that. So how did I know this? Well, I saw a lot of Leo in fifth house. In the fifth house, there were 3 planets. There was Neptune, Uranus, and Saturn. So fifth house is all about, it's basically the house of play. It's the house of creative self-expression. And in this person's chart, there was so many indicators. So what would Saturn in the fifth house do? This is what's interesting. Saturn in the fifth house would mean that, in my opinion, in past lives, there's been almost this person who has been so interested in their own creativity and being in the spotlight that they've held back other people's ability to do that. So it almost has made it harder for this person to be creative and express themselves in this life. But they're also gifted with a Leo ascendant, which makes them have this desire to do that, but the Saturn's kind of pushing it back. But then that Neptune and Uranus are other energies. So wherever Neptune touches in your chart is an energy that it gives that part of your chart this otherworldly quality. It's like it adds this ability to take things from the abstract, right? So if you have that in the house of career, for example, it can make you very wishy-washy with your career choice and almost have to settle on something that's like heart-oriented, that's for the greater good. But if you have it in the fifth house, like this person did, that just adds a bunch of creativity that's only unlocked through like abstract, like out of this world creativity that's only unlocked through creative self-expression. And the same goes for Uranus. Uranus is about quick flashes of intuition. It's eccentric. It's future-oriented. So, yeah, I thought that was really interesting that this person had that. And then they also had Pluto in Leo. And I'm blanking on what house Pluto was in. But basically the whole point was that all of these outer planets were creating this picture of what this person needs to achieve. This very obvious picture of this person needs to go deep within and figure out who they are and then express that in a way that's authentic to themselves and not based on any societal norms or anything outside themselves. And then you look at that, the outer planets, and compare it to how the inner planets were lined up. The inner planets were all, they had this personality that, yeah, there was some blocks like the Saturn and a few aspects that made it difficult, such as Sun square Jupiter and also Venus square Pluto. But overall, it was a chart of a very creative person that once they're able to get past some of those inner blocks could have a lot of potential to be someone extremely creative. And I've seen so many different things in different charts. I've seen charts of people who their big lesson is to learn to be less, to like individuate and be less a part of the tribe, such as like someone with I just had a client who had the South Node in Cancer, North Node in Capricorn, and tons of other indicators that, like I think of first house Pluto, that were just pushing towards this individuation process and kind of showing a tendency to rely on taking their identity from a collective as opposed to an individual self and really finding themselves. So I don't want to make this video too long. We're already at 12 minutes, but yeah, this is definitely like one of the ways I love to do astrology is just look at how the inners and the outers are really pushing towards a certain goal. And it really varies. Like sometimes with some charts, most of my charts I start with the inner planets. But there's been charts that I've started with outer planets. I started with Pluto and the nodes because I've been able to tell like this is such a big thing for that person. So yeah, it's very interesting. I'm going to leave it at that. I'll probably continue to post more and more videos that maybe I'll do some chart analysis with different birth charts where I really dive into maybe like a chart that I've found like a lot of parallels and obvious themes that can kind of show someone who's seen this for the first time how I denoted all of these past life claims and ideas of what their goals are for this lifetime. So anyways, thanks for watching. I'm going to continue to post a lot of videos, and I'll leave all my bio or all of my information with my website and everything in the bio if you're interested in getting a reading from me and really hearing about how this works for your chart. Thanks so much. Bye.